Okay, so today I'm doing my reading vlog, talking all the books that I read, all the shows I watched, life update, reading, watching vlog, everything that went on for the very first week of October. So this vlog is going to cover from the 1st to the 7th of October 2023. So yeah, a lot of different things to discuss. Let's start as always with the life update. So this week I worked 9:30 to 5:30 every day, and the shift was okay. I do prefer 8 to 4, as much as it annoys me to get up early. I do prefer the 8 to 4 shift, but 9:30 to 5:30 was alright. I didn't mind that. But going into the upcoming week, I am not looking forward to this schedule at all. It is the absolute latest that you can do. And I don't know if I've actually even done it before. And when I saw my schedule, I thought, oh gosh, well, I guess everyone needs to do this one at least once. 12:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. I am, as someone who much prefers to start early and finish early, this couldn't be any more the opposite to that one. So, yeah. Yeah, if I'm used to starting at 8 a.m., I'm gonna finish more than 12 hours after that this week. So, we shall see how things go. Wish me the best of luck. Alright, let's talk about watching. So, I got into the mood of watching Charmed this week, the OG Charmed, that is, with, that starts off with Phoebe, Piper, and Prue. And so I decided to put aside Gilmore Girls and get into Charmed, and it worked really well for me. I've watched this show so many times, I could probably quote every episode. But I was purposefully holding off from my next binge for as long as I could, and I finally got to the point where I asked myself during this last week, when was the last time I watched Charmed? And I couldn't answer the question, so I knew it was time. That's how you know. In case you're wondering, like, how do you know when it's time for your next binge of a show you've seen that many times? When you ask yourself the question, when was the last time I watched this, and you can't answer that question, that's when you know it's time. So I started, and I have flown through. I got through all of season 1, and I think I'm very close to the end of season 2 as well. I need to check, actually. Give me a sec, I'll check where I'm up to with Charmed. Okay, I'm up to season 2, episode 12, so I'm just over halfway through season 2, so 1.5 seasons in, and yeah, really enjoying it. I'm more used to the Piper, Phoebe, and Paige era of Charmed, but that's because I grew up starting in that era. So the very first episode that I watched ever of Charmed was season 4, episode 1, which is the first season where things change and we no longer have Prue and we start having Paige. So yeah, for me, OG Charmed is not OG Charmed because OG Charmed has Paige for me, whereas OG Charmed in real life has Prue. But I enjoy watching the first 3 seasons whenever I do because I'm not used to them as much as I am the rest of the series. There are some episodes that I do remember, like obviously there's the episode where they go back to the past, and without giving away spoilers, if you know, you know, that whole thing with Phoebe happens in the past. So obviously I remember that one because that was a huge, huge episode. The Miss Hellfire episode, I remembered that one, and it's funny, I was thinking yesterday about that, going, oh, I wonder when the Miss Hellfire episode's coming up, and then the moment I thought it, the very next episode was Miss Hellfire, so it worked well. Yeah, and then just little things that I remember, obviously, like with episode 1 with Jeremy. It's hard to forget the pilot, obviously. First time Piper tells Leo that she loves him and all the situations that, revolve around that and how that came to be. The whole situation with Andy in the season finale of season 1. Yeah, and just many other things. Leo and Dan, Buckland's Quake. I think there's actually an episode where Piper says in a later season, wow, Quake, seems like such a long time ago. But yeah, Quake only lasted season 1, so it was nice to go back and watch Piper at Quake. And obviously now, being that I'm in season 2, Piper is running P3, and I'm enjoying that too. Yeah, so we'll see how things go moving forward. There are many things that are coming up that I'm looking forward to. Do you have favourite episodes of the OG Charmed? Let me know in the comment section below. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at the moment. I've definitely shelved Murder, She Wrote. I have probably shelved Gilmore Girls for the moment. I will get back to Big Brother when I'm in the mood. Right now I'm just really loving Charmed, so I will catch up to Big Brother USA as soon as I can. But yeah, right now my focus is on Charmed and I'm enjoying it, so that's a good thing. Okay, let's talk about reading, because there is a lot to talk about. We have started the month, and the month of October started off really, really well for me, and then I hit a bit of a slump. So we'll start off with the good and then end with the challenging, shall we say. So the first book that I read in this past week, and therefore the first book that I read in October, was this book, Dark Ride by Ian Rob Wright. This is an adult horror, and I gave this book a total of 4.5 stars. I am reading 4 Ian Rob Wright books this month, and I've read the first 2 so far, so I'm really excited to read the next 2 as well, and yeah, probably end up having a shelf of just Ian Rob Wright books by the time we're done, but we'll see how we go. As for Dark Ride, the premise is Bright Lights AJ Starr is a pro wrestler on the rise, and his life is about to change forever. Knowing this, he plans one last party with all his best friends. The venue, Saxon Hills Theme Park, abandoned 10 years ago after its flagship ride burned down and killed 9 innocent people. Some people say the place is haunted. But AJ knows from his time inside the squad circle that fantasy and reality are totally separate things. Or so he thought. AJ has no idea how nightmarish things are about to get, and eventually he'll be wondering whether he brought his friends to Saxon Hills Theme Park to have fun or to die. So, to my thoughts, and I'll start off with the negative. Chapter 1 was really good and had me really intrigued. Now that I'm rereading my review on Goodreads of this book, it's reminding me of Chapter 1. Chapter 1 was really good and had me really intrigued as to what would happen with the story. Then Chapter 2 began, and suddenly Chapter 1 felt completely unnecessary. I wondered if there would be a link at the end, but there wasn't. To keep it spoiler-free, in Chapter 1 we're shown something. In Chapter 2, one character tells the others of that thing. In Chapter 1 we meet 3 characters. From Chapter 2 onwards they are never seen again. Just a real head-scratcher as to why it was there. And more importantly, I actually really loved Chapter 1. So we're following a single mother. I'm trying to remember. We're following a single mother in Chapter 1 and her 2 kids, and they're at this theme park, like this scary theme park, and one of the kids wants to go on the ghost ride, and so they're about to go on the ghost ride, and then something happens, and it was just a really, really intriguing chapter. And then Chapter 2 happens, and we're following these other completely different characters, and I thought, oh, okay, you know, probably going to have them all meet up at some point, the characters of Chapter 1, the characters of Chapter 2, but as time went on in Dark Ride from Chapter 2 onwards, I realised, oh no, we're not seeing the characters from Chapter 1 again. And then we get this reveal / ending, you know, that happens, the big climax that happens at the end. And I thought, oh, okay, maybe the climax will, you know, link back to Chapter 1. No, it didn't. So it didn't make sense to me. We didn't need Chapter 1. And yet I loved Chapter 1. Ian Rob Wright, if you're hearing me, get Chapter 1 from this book and then keep writing from that chapter, write Chapter 2 with those same characters. I want to follow them. In saying that, the book was still good. Once I moved past all of that and got to know the new characters, I enjoyed each and every moment. I struggled to enjoy King's work, that is Stephen King's, but Ian Rob Wright hasn't let me down yet, and I can't wait to read 3 more books by him this month alone. Thanks again, Ian. Here's to many more books, and I gave this one 4.5 stars. So I do recommend it. I just think that you could certainly skip chapter 1 if you wanted to. It wouldn't make a difference if you read it or not. But yeah, it was good all in all. 4.5 stars is a very high rating, and I docked 0.5 stars because of that first chapter. But everything else was really, really, really well done. So the next book that I picked up was this Ian Rob Wright book, Animal Kingdom, which is also an adult horror, and I gave this book 4 stars. So the premise of this book is, aside from being freakishly tall, Joe is just an ordinary divorcee taking his son Danny to the zoo for his weekend of custody. Everything is going great until a bizarre snake attack sends everybody in the zoo running for cover. It isn't long before Joe realizes that there is a lot more going on than a simple snake attack, and if the hungry lions, roaring gorillas, and rampaging elephants have anything to do about it, there will be more bloodshed to come. So to my thoughts, maybe it's just me, but after being spoiled with many amazing Ian Rob Wright books, I did not find this as horrific as the others. Don't get me wrong, things happen in the book, but I saw it more as a look at the animals in the zoo rather than a horror. I docked a star because I expected more from a horror by Ian Rob Wright, but for what it was a good book. I just wouldn't recommend it as a full-on horror like most of his books are, as to me this one wasn't, and I gave it 4 stars. Just to elaborate on that, so it's kind of like a post-apocalyptic adult horror, in that we have these characters who end up getting trapped ultimately in a room. And when I say ultimately, I mean like from chapter 3 onwards. They're trapped in this room, and there's animals that surround the room that are trying to break in and kill the people who are trapped inside. And honestly, for me, it just didn't feel as horrific as Ian Rob Wright's books normally are. And so while there may be some readers out there who read Animal Kingdom and go, oh my gosh, this is so scary, here I was reading this book going, oh, which animal's trying to break in next? Oh, the cute elephants. Oh, look, the peacocks. Oh, the monkeys. So I didn't really see it as a horror, but an exploration into all the different types of animals you may come across in a zoo. So I liked the book. I thought the book was great. I enjoyed the animal representation, let's put it that way. But did I think that it was up to par with Ian Rob Wright's usual adult horror books, where he always crosses that proverbial line so much that they become amazing horror books, like full-on horror books? No, I didn't enjoy this one as much as those. I know this is probably the lightest Ian Rob Wright book I've ever read. But in saying that, you know, if we're to make the comparison between did I think it deserved 5 stars for an amazing horror? No. And did I enjoy the book for what it was? Yes. Well, there you go. I can look at it both ways. I enjoyed the book for what it was. I just wouldn't recommend going into it if you're looking for a full-on horror, unless the idea of being trapped in a room with animals outside that are trying to get in to try and kill you scares you. Then maybe you will. But for me, say I looked at it like, oh, there's the birds and there's the monkeys and there's the elephants and oh, look, the cheetahs, how lovely. Oh, and there's the lions. So everyone's going to take it differently, but for me, 4 stars. And I do still love Ian Rob Wright. I think if this is Ian Rob Wright's first miss as far as I'm concerned when it comes to how full on his horrors are, and I think I've read like 7 or 8 of his work so far. He's on a win-loss record that's huge, 7 wins and 1 loss. So I'll definitely look forward to reading the next 2 Ian Rob Wright books I plan to read this month, and the many more that I plan to read in 2024. But for this one, 4 stars from me. So I then picked up this book, The Troop, by Nick Cutter, again an adult horror. I had been looking forward to reading this book for 3 years, and oh my gosh, the anticipation and eagerness to read a book that you've been waiting to read for 3 years. By the time you get to it, you're just like, yay, I'm finally reading this thing. Let me tell you how much my heart plummeted when I first started reading this book. The writing style was so unnecessarily complicated. I understand if you're an author and you're writing a literary fiction, book that it's going to have a literary fiction writing style that may not be the easiest to understand, may have a lot of purple prose, may have very flowery writing. I understand all that, and that is the intention of the author, to focus on the writing style more, in my opinion, than the actual story itself. But when it comes to a horror, I find the more simple the writing style, the more effective the story is going to be, because you're less, you're less wrapped up in the horrific elements, which is the point of a horror, to be freaked out by the horror. So it's either going to, gross you out, freak you out, creep you out, force you to leave the light on, or convince you you're going to have a nightmare. How you're going to be affected as much by that when the writing style is so complicated, I don't know. So for me, I would suggest any amazing horror writer I've come across uses a simplistic writing style. As much as I may not love Stephen King anywhere near as much as I love Ian Rob Wright, Stephen King's writing style is very simple to read. Ian Rob Wright's writing style is very simple to read. Nick Cutter's writing style is incredibly difficult to read, and it was disappointing. I got to the end of chapter 1 and I DNF'd, and I just kept sitting there thinking, I can keep going, I can try and read for an hour and see, how I go. Maybe after the hour, I'll want to keep reading. And then once I got to the end of chapter 1, I just thought, no, I'm going to feel like I'm wasting my time the more I continue reading this, because I feel like I'm ultimately going to DNF it anyway, which is really disappointing, because I was really looking forward to reading the book. From what I'd heard, it's an amazing horror that deals with certain things I won't say, but it deals with, let's just say it's grotesque horror. Let's put it that way. So I was intrigued to test myself and see how I would go with the book, but I don't understand why you want to have a really complex to read writing style for a horror. It just didn't make sense to me. So ultimately I DNF'd that one and picked up my next book on my TBR, which was this book, Black Chalk, by Christopher J. Yates. This is an adult horror as well. Actually, I think it's an adult thriller, to be fair. But anyway, this book was a lot easier for me to understand, even though it's not the easiest writing in the world. It's easier to understand than The Troop. So I continued on with this one, which is good. So yeah, not really a whole lot that I can tell you about this one, other than the fact that we're following this guy who is a hermit. He is a self-confessed hermit, and I don't know. I'm still trying to work it out, because I'm about 100 pages in. I'm still trying to work out what's going on, but I feel like we have a dual perspective as far as then and now, because even though it's not obviously written in that way, it feels like with this book, at certain points, we have our hermit somewhere, and then we have him somewhere else. And by those somewheres, I mean somewhere completely different. Like, for example, in the past, at least what I think is the past, they're in New York, but in the present, they're in England, I think. Or it's the other way around. Either way, all good. But yeah, the main premise of this book seems to be that this English guy met up with this American guy in college, and they are planning a game, which is going to be like a game of dares, where they're going to have 6 competitors do these dares. If you fail to do the dare, you have to do a punishment, something like that. And they have come across this group called Game Sock, and Game Sock have decided to invest $10,000 into the game because they like the idea of the game so much. And that's kind of where I'm at. At the moment, the protagonist and his friend are doing everything they can to try and plan out all the kinks and everything to make sure everything's ready to go for this game to be played. And I think that's what intrigued me to the book in the first place, is I love thrillers or horrors with a game element in them. So this is very different for me, because rather than being involved in playing the game, this is more being involved in the planning of the game. And I appreciate that. So far, Christopher J. Yates has written a good book, and we'll keep going and see how things go. So let's take a look at what my plan is for this coming week. I don't know, I'll be honest. I don't know how much reading I'm going to get done, given that my schedule is 12:30 to 8:30 this week. But obviously the next goal is to finish off Black Chalk. Once that is done, I will pick up my next Ian Rob Wright, which is The Picture Frame. And then after The Picture Frame, I'll read 12 Steps by Ian Rob Wright. If I still have time, which I doubt I will, then the next book after 12 Steps that I'll pick up will be this book, Mischief Nights Are Murder by Libby Klein, which is book 8 of 8 in the Poppy McAllister mystery series. Look, just wrapping things up very quickly, it's been an interesting week. So I really am loving my Charmed. I loved my schedule this past week. Not really looking forward to the upcoming schedule. Reading has been pretty good, the first 2 books, but then a DNF and now Black Chalk. So yeah, it's been an interesting week. I think that's the best way to put it. How has your first week of October gone? Let me know in the comment section below. But in the meantime, there's where I am going to leave it. Letting you all go with peace, blessings, and so much love. Please do be kind and love one another and spread your sparkling energy all throughout the world. And until next time, happy reading. Bye everyone.